Welcome to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast, Achieving Peace Through Compassion. This podcast is a recording of the Dharma Talks given during our Sunday service.
I like to give talks that are positive and uplifting. And today I'm going to talk about how to train while dying. So that's a little bit out of my comfort zone, but that's okay because your comfort zone is comfortable because you're not growing, right? So outside of your comfort zone, that's a good thing. So we're going to talk today about how to train while dying. Last week, my friend Nicole gave a talk on how to train while living, how to bring these spiritual teachings, into your life and to use them when you need them. And I'm going to talk about how we can use them when it's coming to the end of our lives. So it's a thing we maybe don't like to think about a lot. I know I don't. But these spiritual teachings, they can help us when death is looming. That is when, like sometimes people just suddenly die, of course, and they don't have time to think about spiritual teachings. But for many people, it's something that's the train has left the station and you see the trains going and you know what's coming, right? So we're going to talk about how these teachings and practices can help us when we're in that situation. So I have this great honor to be the one to speak about this. So I know I'm afraid to die for the same reason. Really, I think it's for the same reason that I like to give into temptations all the time, and I like to not do things I don't feel like doing, and that's because self-clinging. I'm obsessed with myself. And that's got to be a tough thing when you're coming to the end, to be obsessed with yourself, because then you will start to think, oh, a world without me in it? I don't think so. That doesn't sound good at all, right? Even if the uncertainty isn't what scares you. So I'm going to tell you a story really quick. I'm going to tell you more than one story, but I'm going to tell you a story. There was this singer, and he may or may not be famous to you. He was moderately famous. His name was Warren Zevon, and he was active from the 70s until his death. And he was just a moderate success. Like, he didn't have Jay-Z money, but I'm sure he did okay. I'm sure he was more comfortable than most of us here in our lives. But he found out he had mesothelioma. So he had about a year to live and he was going to die. And so part of what he did was record a final album, which is a great thing for a musician to do, probably just a final gift to the world. But he was friends with a famous person, the talk show host David Letterman. Do you guys know him? He was friends with David Letterman, and he went every time he made an album, even though he was just a little bit famous, he got to go on Letterman. And when he was going to die, he went on this show. And he talked about his diagnosis and his illness and how scared he was. He talked about the whole thing. It was the only guest on the episode, and you can look that up. It's on YouTube. But I'm telling you all that to tell you that in that interview, Dave asked him, is there something about life and death that you know now that I don't know now? And what Warren Zevon said was, you should enjoy every sandwich. You should enjoy every sandwich. And so I take that to mean, although he didn't elaborate on it, I take that to mean, like, are we living our best lives? Are we living our best lives, or are we sleepwalking through life? I think a lot of the time we're sleepwalking through life and we're not appreciating the little things, and we're unmindful and we're distracted, and maybe we're not making the best choices. And that's the situation we're in. We aren't enjoying every sandwich, but we could. In Buddhism, we're training in mindfulness, wisdom, compassion, and love. And these are the tools that help us get through life in this crazy world. And I think they can help us get through end of life too, because that's when we really need tools to help us, because that can be a really, really scary time. So Warren Zevon was in his early 50s when he died, by the way. I didn't say his age. He was in his early 50s, and I'm 43. Now that I'm middle-aged, I'm 43. The 50s seems like a really young time to die to me. And I know I'm middle-aged because my doctor has prescribed me vitamin D supplements. So now I know I'm middle-aged. Anybody else? Yeah. So evidently I don't have everything I need. But that's not according to the plan at all. I think we should live to be 75 at least, right? But people die all sorts of ages. And so when this is the last thing I'll say about Warren Zevon, I promise. When he was dying, he wrote a final album, and he wrote this song for his wife, and it's called Keep Me in Your Heart for a While. And I really encourage you to Google that song after this, because it's the most romantic thing I've ever heard, and also really emotional. And he says the line, when you're doing simple things around the house, maybe you'll think of me and smile. And that, you guys, it makes me think of my parents. And this is the part of the talk where I overshare, and I hope that's okay with you. Like Warren Zevon, each one of my parents got cancer and died in their 50s. And they were 40 when I was born, so I had kind of older parents growing up than all my friends. But when I was 15, my father got cancer, and he lived for about a year, and then he died. And then when I was 19, my mother got cancer, and she lived for about a year, and she died. And so, people say college is supposed to be the best part of your life, and that was not the case for me. I struggled a long time, but I'm okay. Please don't tell me you're sorry for my loss, because it was nearly 25 years ago. But they didn't get the chance to model for me how a parent interacts with their children when they're adults, because they didn't get that opportunity. I'm sure they wanted it. They didn't get that. So now that my kids, 3 of my 4 kids are teenagers, I don't know how to relate to them as adults. So I'm kind of worried about that. My daughter's 16, and I just gave her a car, and I really didn't want to give her a car because I didn't want her to grow up, because I don't know how to relate to adult children. But what they did model for me, though, was how to die, because it really seemed like they calmly accepted it. And that's how I want to be. I have this fear that if I get a terminal illness, I'm going to just be a nervous wreck and a mess all the time until I die. That's what I'm afraid of. I have some anxiety issues, as many people do. So I worry about it. And I also have, do you guys know this concept of man flu? Maybe you do, and maybe you don't. I'll explain it. But the idea behind it is, and one day we may think this is offensive, but the idea behind it is that when a woman is sick, she just puts on her running shoes and she gets down to business and does whatever she needs to do, and it's not a big deal. And when a man is sick, that he is totally miserable and falling apart and just wants to lay in bed and thinks he can't do anything. And I'm telling you that I don't know if man flu is true or not, but I know it's true in my house, because I get that. And my wife, Alicia, does not struggle when she's sick, really. We had COVID even, and she was mostly just okay going through life. And I was like, right? So that's why I worry that if I get something really serious, what if I'm just I have man flu, but it's for a real problem, right? That's what I'm really worried about. But it is the case that my parents modeled that for me. And if they were freaked out and panicked, like I was around enough, they wouldn't have been able to hide that from me. I'm sure they would have tried, but I want to calmly accept it, because I think that's a better way. That's a better way to be. What I don't want is to come to my death and have just incredible regrets, right? And just be thinking about how much I could have done better. So I'm going to go over this teaching called the 5 forces really quickly. And that's it. Then we'll be done. So the 5 forces are this teaching that is supposed to help us integrate our spiritual practices. And so last week, my friend Nicole talked about integrating these while we're living, and I'm going to talk about integrating these while we're dying. And that's, we'll see how that goes. We'll see how we like talking about that. But the first one is called planting positive seeds. And I think that's sort of an easy metaphor for us to grasp, because we talk about that sometimes. Planting seeds is like planting a tree when you're going to die before the tree is there for you to enjoy the shade, right? That is what that is. So it's just, I care that the world is a better place when I leave it than it is when I came to it. I care about that. And there's an aspect of generosity to this too. So if I'm coming to my end and I'm trying to give things away, maybe I don't cling to things so tightly. And then if I don't cling to things so tightly, hopefully I don't cling to myself so tightly, because that's the problem. I'm clinging to myself. And I think it's an old Hebrew saying that is, there's no pockets in burial shrouds. There's no pockets in burial shrouds. And what's that? It's just, you're not taking your stuff with you, right? So I encourage everyone to make a will, though, because you don't want to, I mean, you'll be gone, of course, but we don't want to create the situation where people don't know what we wanted and they have to fight over it. So I do encourage you to make a will. And that's something my parents modeled for me. They made my brother the executor of the estate, which at the time when I was my brother, he's 50 now. He was in his late 20s. And at the time when I was 19, I thought, oh, that's crap. He shouldn't be the executor. I should just have my money. But now that I'm older, I know, oh, well, no, that would have been irresponsible to just give a 19-year-old their full inheritance right away. But at the time, so I've grown, I guess. But so making a will is a good idea. So the second one is aspiration. And we really just want to make sure we're generating compassion and wisdom even when death is coming. Even when death is coming, we want to have compassion and wisdom. It's sort of counterintuitive, but when we're very selfish, we tend to make things worse for ourselves. At least that's been my experience. When I give into all my selfishness, then there are some consequences that come on me later. And so we want to aspire to still be generating compassion and wisdom so that we can end our lives in the same way that we're trying to live our lives. And the third one is regret. And for me, that is just reflecting on and reminding myself how many times self-clinging, that self-obsession has not served me very well, or has even made things really bad for me. Just reflecting on that and really figuring out what we regret in our lives and trying to make amends, because if we're coming to the end, it's almost too late, right? And so the next one is called the propelling force. I'm not crazy about that terminology, the propelling force, but it's just we talk in terms of taking a vow, just vowing to cultivate these good things in our death. And then if we believe in future lives, even in our future lives, vowing to still cultivate this wisdom and compassion, so that we're, just as we want to live the best way we can, live our best lives, we want to pass on the best way we can too. And then the last one is familiarization. And that is just, it's good to reflect on these things. It's good to reflect on the insights our practice has given us and on how we want to live our lives and how we want to die. There's there was a Buddhist teacher named Stephen Levine, and he gave a teaching he established a practice called Year to Live practice. And some teachers in the insight tradition still teach this practice, I think. Mary Stankovich is one. And the practice, what they do is it's called Year to Live, and you pretend you're going to die for a year. You pretend this is the last year of your life. And you meet with this group every month, and you just go through various practices to just talk about like making it easier to come to the end of your life. And I think I've not done that practice, but it's very fascinating to me. And I think I would like to do it, because we are unprepared a lot of the time. You know, our culture doesn't like to have deep thoughts and deep questions about death very much. So it can be good to reflect on these things, even if it's very depressing. So that's my talk for today. Thank you. I hope you'll enjoy every sandwich, and have a good day.
Thank you for listening to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast. Music was provided by Barefoot Brand Music. Please consider supporting the Rime Buddhist Center by making a donation at our website at www.rimecenter.org/donate.